and you guys are going to be in for the greatest match of your lives tonight when you watch Buddy Sotello, the greatest managing mind in wrestling today.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for checking out the Indy Handshake Wrestling Podcast. I am Paul Ponte. I am here with Russell Jackman, a.k.a. Buddy Sotello Esquire.
Master of the contract.
How are we doing today, sir?
We can't call me sir. We know each other for far too long and have been through already so many things that calling me sir is not quite the correct title. I mean, we were just talking, we go back about 20 years, to the heart of APW, and maybe when NorCal wrestling was at its strongest peak, I think, was that
absolutely
very late 90s, but early 2000s to like maybe 2006 or 7. The Bay Area indie scene was phenomenal, and we churned out an amazing level of talent went through NorCal. I mean, I was just watching last night AEW and just like going, God, man, I can remember when Brian Cage looked almost like a normal human being.
Yeah, for real.
And I mean, he worked a number of our shows. He worked one of the California Championship Wrestling shows as Mortis. A lot of people don't know that. There weren't a lot of people there, but he did it as a tribute to, his fallen friend. And
he recently started using as a tribute, he uses "Who Betta" as his catchphrase in the ring now.
Yeah, because of that, his friendship with Kanyon, and a lot of people didn't know that Kanyon was the Mortis character. And before he committed suicide, he gave that costume to Brian Cage. And Brian Cage could at any time become Mortis again if he wanted to. A lot of people don't know that, but that's where the costume still wound up. So there's a little bit of indie trivia for those of you who are Brian Cage fans. So,
yeah, I remember especially the name that always comes to mind when I would tell people, more WWE fans about my time doing camera and all that stuff for indie wrestling was, I remember the American Dragon, and he couldn't cut a promo to save his life.
Not at all.
We're here at King of the Indies with 16 of the best wrestlers in the world. I'm not the best wrestler, I'm not the fastest, I'm not the strongest. But when it comes to, I don't know, I lost it there.
Ryan Danielson.
Yeah.
It's weird when they flipped his name around, and I was like, wow, that's okay. If it works for Vince, I guess it works for
anything for that
Brian.
Trademark.
Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, I mean, this has really been interesting because I give my own podcast with Evan Ginsberg called Wrestling and Everything Coast to Coast. So it's sort of odd to be not asking you questions because I'm used to being the one that does the question asking. So I guess my question back to you is, what's on your mind about me?
Well, I have a lot of questions actually, because this is technically the first time I've had someone who was a manager for as long as you were on there. I had Ruby Reyes, and she started off as a valet for a couple of years, but I haven't had someone who did management pretty much almost exclusively. I think. Or did you ever wrestle at all before?
No.
Okay.
I could barely withstand the moments that I was in the ring. No, I come from that Andy Kaufman / Grand Wizard / Jimmy Hart / Jim Cornette kind of lineage of managing. In fact, the first one to really do that was Al Farhart, the Grand Wizard. He was the guy that really had no ring experience and never did anything in the ring, and nobody ever grabbed him or beat him up. He was just, free to just mouth off and let his compatriots to take the beating for the all the crap that he talks. But because before that, managers were pretty much just ex-wrestlers. That's or you had really big guys like really just kind of big muscly dudes who would sometimes get in the ring, get more involved. Now, the one thing I can say for myself is I'm not tiny. I am 5'10", and I'm, well, now thanks to COVID, a little bit more than 185, but I was about 185 then, and I had studied jiu-jitsu, Okinawan jiu-jitsu, not Brazilian jiu-jitsu, but actually Okinawan jiu-jitsu, which is a form of judo. Okay, and it involves a lot of like high falls and throws and being hurled about. Knowing how to fall is a critical part of the early part of jiu-jitsu. It's even more intense than Aikido as far as that goes.
So that must have prepped you pretty good for taking a nice manager bump in the ring.
Well, an interesting side story is I joined this dojo down in the South Bay, and because I was working at AMD, and I lost my job there, and so I had to move back up. But as I left that dojo, they said, "Oh, we have a sensei who has a class in San Rafael, but all his students have just petered out over the years, and he's going to close this school unless somebody joins." So I joined, and I was the only student of his for 4 years.
Oh, wow.
4 years. So he just went and worked on me like exclusively for 4 years. And so he beat me. Well, that's the one thing, is that when you have a big class, it's one thing when you have a lot of other students that can take the falls. Whereas when you and a 7-degree black belt all by yourself, there's no time off. Yeah. So, you get kind of worked out pretty hard by him. But actually, we were solo for the first 2 years, and then we added a few more people into the class, as time moved on. But it was pretty intense 2 years. And so I really learned a lot about falling. That's why when I got into the ring, everyone who becomes a pro wrestler thinks all about dishing out punishment. That's when you're a kid and you think about like pro wrestling, you think about like pile driving somebody or, body slamming someone, whatever. But really, pro wrestling's all about the punishment that you're able to take.
Mm-hmm.
If you
it's a give and take situation.
You'll be able to have a long career in wrestling. If all you can do is dish out punishment, your career is going to be short. And so one thing that I found is that, when you're a manager and you play, the Jimmy Hart type role or something like that, you can sell even the wimpiest punch like you were shot from, an assassin's rifle.
Because the people in the ring they're the ones who are larger than life. So they're like superheroes. So the mere mortal has to take it as though a hurricane has hit them.
Oh, absolutely. Well, at that stage, you were starting to see kind of a rebellion on that concept by those in charge of the WWF and the WWE, as you had Vince McMahon getting in the ring a bunch of times in that early 2000 period. You had Shane McMahon going in and doing all those crazy stunts. You had David Arquette, sorry to bring that up, becoming WCW champion. So there was sort of this trend of like smaller guy, and then everyone loves seeing the small guy getting beaten up. So like people love to see Crash Holly and Spike Dudley get the tar beaten out of them. So I was just another kind of ragdoll type, and I could take some decent moves. So, I was like, fine, I'll do that. And that's the way you get involved. And so, we did that, and I was able to work with some amazing names. You already know all of them, but I'll say a few for some of the viewers, like Mark Smith, who we, were talking about before we went on air, and Boyce LeGrand, and Christopher Daniels, and Brian Cage, and Brian Danielson, or Daniel Bryan, and of course, Dalit Singh, great Khali, You
Mhm.
know, these were all, huge names that came in through the NorCal territory. Nigel McGuinness, Low Key.
Did you mention Kazarian?
Oh, I didn't mention Kazarian, but I
Yeah.
should, because it's Samoa Joe. I worked a
Yep.
match with Samoa Joe. Yeah, I mean, so there were when that XPW invasion, UPW invasion.
Yeah.
UPW was it? I'm trying to remember.
It was UPW.
UPW. UPW with Bassman came up and invaded the NorCal territory. That brought John Cena we were able to, I didn't actually get to meet John Cena really.
The prototype.
Yeah, he was really busy when he came up there. But, I shook his hand kind of thing. But I didn't really talk to him. But I got to talk to Samoa Joe for a while,
Mhm.
and Kazarian, and of course, Johnny Morrison,
Oh, and we had AJ Styles up at APW as well.
That's
right. I remember that because the question I asked AJ Styles when I was because I was working, camera at the show. And so every once in a while, you'll just find yourself by a wrestler and you're just trying to small talk. It's I don't know, what do you talk about? And the first thing I asked, I was just so what's Air Paris been up to lately? And he was I have no idea, man.
Yeah. Well, that cracked him up. You can crack him up, and don't act like too much of a mark to them. I think that's when they, can open up and you can have some good conversations. I mean, some guys just, they're so into their match. If you catch them after the match, that's different. You can talk to them about how they did in the ring. But before their match, some wrestlers, what they want to do is they don't want to talk to anyone, and they are just focus. Some are the exact opposite. They're I want to do anything but think about my match. I've already gone over it 5,000 times. Or you have the veterans who are just I've done this match with this guy. This is our 40th match that we've done, in the last 2 months. We've done it up and down the coast. We've done it across the country. We know our routine. And so then they just want something to pass the time before they, get in. So I think it's important to sort of read the wrestlers in the back and find out the ones that are in the mood to chat and not, chat the ear off of a guy who, is really trying to concentrate for a match.
Yeah, I remember one time when I was doing the website for Big Time Wrestling up here in Northern California, I was in the back and Bret Hart was there and he was talking to Road Warrior Animal or Hawk. I forget. But anyway, he was talking to him and they were just bullshitting. They were just, shooting the shit. But around everyone was kind of just circling around listening to these two guys who were legends, just, talk about random nonsense. And another guy who was working for BTW, one of the volunteer more aspect, he walks in and he just kind of interrupts Bret to ask him a question. And I'm just sitting there dude, read the room. Do you not understand? What, and I think I learned that pretty early on is that 90% of the time wrestlers don't want to talk about wrestling. And 2, if you mark out, their eyes glaze over pretty fast. They're and they shut off.
I mean, on the other hand, for me, anytime a fan wanted to talk to me, I was thrilled. Anytime a fan wanted an autograph from me, I was thrilled. I was this is the greatest. The fact that somebody liked what I did enough to have me want to sign something, a poster for them, especially the little kids, I just thought was a really fun, thing and a great part of what I did, and something I never took for granted.
Let's talk about that. So you're a kid, obviously, I'm assuming, who liked wrestling.
Yes.
So you like wrestling, and I always ask people about this because a lot of people, when they like wrestling as kids, they don't know what independent wrestling is. They don't know what, everything is WWF, WCW, or NWA or whatever. Everything, whatever you see on TV.
Further, my friend. I go back a little further, my friend.
Yeah.
Back to the WWF.
Yes. So I always ask wrestlers, when they start out, how do you first discover independent wrestling and realize that's something you can get into? So as a manager, obviously you're looking up to these managers, you want to do what they do. How do you first discover indie wrestling? How do you first discover getting into something like that? And when do you start thinking, hey, this is possible. This is something I can get into?
Well, okay. One thing is that I am in real life an attorney. Okay,
Mm.
so that is one thing. It's not just a work. I actually
Yeah.
do real legal stuff and I actually am a really good contract writer. Actually, that's something that is natural to me. The way that I do wrestling stuff, it just there's things in your life that that
They
make so
click.
much sense that you just go, okay, I understand. That's why I'm a computer consultant, because I also understand fixing people's computers really well, and especially in this COVID era, I've been doing that a lot with people. But I told you I had that job down in the South Bay, and I lost that job, and at the same time I also had lost this relationship that I'd been in. So I went into like kind of a bad depression kind like moment of my life actually it was for a couple of months, and I was watching TV late at night, and there was an advertisement for All Pro Wrestling, for the All Pro Wrestling School in Hayward. And then like maybe like a month later, there was a news program that did like a thing on All Pro Wrestling. I was like, next time I see the ad for that, I'm going to write down that number. I'm going to call them. I'm going to say, do you guys need any legal contracts for stuff? And see what they have to say. And I called and I reached Roland Alexander, and Roland, I mean, you knew him. He is an interesting guy that knew that there were ways to get things out of people that weren't necessarily monetarily related. Like he knew how to like barter one person's services for another person's services, and therefore get both of those people to be indebted to him.
Yeah, which is a skill which is a skill that I think you kind of need to be a successful promoter or booker in wrestling.
But it eats itself up.
It does.
The problem is it's a Peter paying Paul type situation where you're the middleman and you make these two people pay each other off through you and try to make them seem like they're indebted to you for that as a favor. That becomes this circle that can bite itself on the ass really easily and bit Roland on the ass many times. That's why, unfortunately, he died bankrupt. He died with a lot of people are like, well, APW did this and APW did that. It's like, yeah, but Roland didn't earn a dime doing it. That's one thing, is that a lot of promoters don't make any money doing it, other than like Kirk White and BTW, who does those sold shows, and then Butch, who does the wrestling for charity. But it's been tough for him to do those too. And everyone's suffering during the COVID crisis. I don't know if Roland could have kept everything going. I don't even know how APW is keeping things going right now. But anyway, I got to know Roland through doing the legal work for them. And then I said, okay, paying me off, just I want to learn how to become a pro wrestling manager. I have all this jiu-jitsu training. And I went and I drove from Marin County to the Hayward facilities every Saturday and got beaten up in a class that included referee Tom Castor and Sarah Del Rey. Sarah Del Rey, who's the, now like development of talent at WWE.
Yeah.
And she used to practice by beating the hell out of me every Saturday. It's one thing that I called her was Stiff Sarah. She just would wallop me. She didn't like have great judge of distance and things like that. So, the low blow, she really low blowed me the first time. And I mean, not like in a sexual way, but just like walloped me right in, the Johnson. And like, I was doubled down on the floor for probably about 15 minutes. I was like, okay, I don't think that's how it's supposed to happen. So I have that's a claim to fame there, is being walloped severely by Sarah Del Rey on a weekly basis. But I'm so proud of both her and what Tom Castor has been able to do as a ref. I mean, that, as I said, that one class right there provided two amazing professionals that, influenced the shape of the WWE as we know it. And we had Dilip Singh in there too. So I mean, that was all that class of 2000 provided, a real like forever historical influence on the World Wrestling Federation / entertainment company. So it was quite wild times.
Yeah, and besides getting hit in the junk extremely hard, what else was surprising about when you first started training to be a manager, based on what you saw on TV and what you expected and what you ended up happening?
Yeah, well, of course, the glamour, sort of goes away immediately once you see these guys, hanging around in the locker room, picking their nose and
spit and chew into
spitting tobacco. Oh my God. Like just, that was everywhere. The cups that were full of tobacco was everywhere. God, and I am not a tobacco chewer. So
no, I had to avert my eyes many times when people were like sitting there
gross.
talking, just holding it like right in front of them.
Yeah,
I'm like, just looking up.
No, I think today's kids are a little bit hipper than that. They don't do, but the vaping I hear is just as bad. Anyway.
Yeah, I'm assuming that's what it is now.
Yeah, it's just turned to vaping rather than shop. But things that one thing that I always thought was interesting from my perspective of when I joined APW was, I kind of joined the sort of the back office type because I was working with their legal stuff and things like that. So I wasn't just a talent. I was also intertwined with the goings on of APW and talking to Roland a lot about, where we wanted it to go and things like that. And so, it was a tough situation for Roland because I think overall, I think he was a good enough guy. I think he was. But he also was a guy that sort of was, he had a balance between like his giving self, where he was a very giving guy, and a very selfish person that wanted to get a lot of credit for everything that went on. And I don't know, did you see The Last Dance at all? The Jordan documentary, Jordan documentary?
I did not know. I've heard about it, but I haven't seen it yet.
There was a guy for the Bulls, Jerry Reinsdorf, who is kind of small, kind of ugly, not a good looking guy, but he's the guy that assembled the Bulls. And he always wanted to get more credit for assembling the Bulls than anyone ever gave him credit for. It's all, when they talk about the Bulls, they talk about Michael Jordan. You don't know who Jerry Reinsdorf is. So it obviously proves that, he didn't turn out to be a famous person, but he was the mastermind behind all that stuff. Well, Roland had that same kind of thing going on, that he wanted to be recognized for being, putting all these guys in place, for Modest's career, for Donovan Morgan's career, for Dilip's career, for Sarah Del Rey's career. He wanted credit for that, but no one wanted to give it to him. And that was for a variety of reasons, some of which you may already be well aware of, having met him personally. I mean, again, not a bad human being, really deep down inside, not a bad person, not an evil guy, but he was the schlubbiest person like on the face of the earth. And schlub meaning like he looked like he rolled out of bed like every single hour of the day.
A lot of sweatpants and.
Well, okay. Well, he never shaved. He always had that like 3-day growth. He wouldn't grow it out to a beard all the time. It would just always look like he just hadn't shaved. Like he just got up, and he would wear flip flops. He sometimes would wear those tank tops that showed, or those T-shirts with the arms cut out in them, because tough guys were all wearing them in the mid 90s and late 90s. That was the big fashion then. And it just, and I, that was one thing that really was a big problem that caused the breakup between between Pro Wrestling Iron and All Pro Wrestling, was that the Donovan Morgan and Modest wanted to work with Pro Wrestling Noah. And the Noah representatives came up, they saw Delete, they saw Modest, they saw Donovan. They were like, oh yeah, we're really impressed. Then they met Roland, who came, these Japanese guys who are wearing like $1,000 suits met Roland, who was wearing a backwards baseball cap, flip-flops, like jean cut-off shorts, and just looked, and I think he was wearing sunglasses. And you know, I don't have to, maybe this isn't about Japanese ethics or morals, but Japanese, especially the pro wrestlers, are almost like Japanese military members. They have this super strict code. You know, it's like they treat wrestling there like they treat martial arts there, or MMA, or whatever. They still treat wrestling like it's a serious thing. What you're doing is something that has honor to it.
Yeah.
And if you disgrace it, then they hate your guts. You know? And so Roland, just the way he showed up for this meeting, just was so like, they were so offended by it that they just like said, Donovan, we want you. Modest, we want you. Delete, we want you. But please don't bring that guy Roland anywhere around us ever again. And so that was a really impetus. They said, you know what, as a way to get you guys involved, we'll help you form Pro Wrestling Iron, and we'll link it with Pro Wrestling Noah. And so that's how Pro Wrestling Iron split off. And it also led to a disastrous King of the Indies match. And actually the guy who benefited most from that alliance was our own friend Mark Smith, who used that Noah connection to get himself booked to both Japan for a number of years and then to Puerto Rico.
Yeah. And he was over in both countries, like really well over, like for an American.
Too over in Puerto Rico, if you get my meaning.
Yeah.
No one will ever know.
Yeah.
No one will ever know the truth about what happened with Mark Smith. I hope sometime they actually do find out what happened. I don't think he just had a heart attack and died.
Interesting.
I don't want to get this podcast in any trouble, but I'm going to say that just as a friend of Mark Smith, he didn't lead. I had no indication that he had any health problems or that he was suffering from any heart ailments at the time that he said he died.
Yeah, that was one of those ones that really came out of nowhere. And it was strange, man. It was one of those things where it happened and I was like, there's no way. Like a dude who, like you said, like there was a lot of guys, I'm not going to name names because this isn't a shoot podcast. This isn't a Barry podcast, but there are guys I encountered in All Pro Wrestling and Pro Wrestling Iron that were, you know, that would get really drunk or do other stuff. And they would kind of party a bit. Sometimes at times they probably shouldn't have, whether that be maybe during even kind of near training matches, or some other things. Anyway, point being, Mark was never one of those guys. And, you know, and he was very like quiet and just kind of like, he wasn't a dude that you thought, oh, this guy like rages. But he wasn't that guy. So I don't know. Yeah, I struggle to believe it as well. I'll say that without any kind of.
I have a couple of great Mark Smith stories.
Let's do that because I love the guy and I would love to hear some.
To be honest with you, there's probably 10. If I had a list of 10 people that I miss the most in my life, Mark Smith's one of them. I don't want to tear up about this because thinking about him still makes me very sad. I mean, he died 4 months after my kids were born. So I was and I had twins. So I was it was just such a tumultuous time in my life. I couldn't go to his funeral. And I was one of the few people from APW that was invited to his funeral. But it was in Modesto. And for people that don't know California, I mean, going from Marin County to Modesto, it's like a day's drive pretty much. And it was like at noon, and I found out about it like 2 days before it happened. It was all very strange. So there's a lot of big mystery as to what happened there. So I just want to clarify that. But getting back to Mark Smith, and one thing is a lot of people do not know this, but he was a big friend of Leon White, and Leon White wanted him to become the next Vader. Leon White actually offered to give him the helmet and the shoulder pads, and said, "You can come down to the ring from now on if you want to be, Vader 2, Vader 2000, whatever you want to call yourself." And Mark Smith said, "You know what, man? There's only one Vader. That's you. I don't want to take away from your character, and I don't want you to say that someone else was you. You were this character. You will always be Vader. And that's that." And that kind of says a lot to who Mark Smith was, because it's not only did he value a guy like Vader and respect him to the highest degree, because that was like the kind of big man that Mark Smith always wanted to be, but also he wanted to be who he was. He wanted to be genuine. And when I first met Mark Smith, he was just sort of, he was just Mark Smith, the football hero. And he looked great, but as a face, he just wasn't getting over. He just was just, he was with the Gigolo, Vinny Massaro, if you remember that gimmick, where he had this jester hat, and he would do this, he'd dance to Ice Baby, I think, or Funky Cold Medina, something like that, before the match started. It was all very hokey, and the fans were not buying it. I was like, this was when I was still attending early indie matches at APW, and I hadn't actually, been trained. I was still starting out my training, but I was just, not actually in doing my managerial character yet. And I was just like, I went up to Roland and I said, "These guys, they have talent, but as faces, they're just not getting over. Why don't we find a way to make them heels and see what they get?" And with Mark Smith, we went with the Super Destroyer 2000 character, which to me was, when you talk about like how much you love wrestling as a little kid, when you talk about like, you dream like up characters when you're a little kid. You're like, I never dreamed that like I could be like a wrestler. Like I would sit there and be heavyweight champion. I mean, of course, everyone imagines they'd be heavyweight champion, but the truth is, I always knew, I was never going to be big enough to be. But have you ever like seen like the Warner Brothers cartoon where they have the little dog and then they have the big bulldog right next to him? I love that cartoon. And I love the little yappy dog that goes bark, 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 then runs behind the big dog, and then, now you take care of him. So that, Mark Smith as Super Destroyer was perfect in that role. He didn't have to talk. He just had to act menacing. And it transformed him. He said he was thinking about like going back to like, like being a coach in football or something like that. He was like, wrestling was not fun for him. And me and Mark changed everything by putting that mask on and by him playing the old school. I mean, we even gave him the heart punch as a finishing move to just like emphasize to fans what an old school concept. He would come out to the ring with no music, because we were like trying to really old school it, make it like, either like the Masked Superstar or, the Spoiler. None of those guys ever came out with any music. And Mark and I had a great time. We really did. And then one of the times we went to Vegas, and when we went to Cauliflower Alley, and Vinny and Donovan and Modest and at the time Veronica, who married Vinny, they all went to this club in Vegas, and I was like, no, I'm not going, because A, there's going to be a fight probably, and B, I'm not a dance club kind of guy. And Mark said he's not either. And I said, well, that's interesting. Why aren't you? And he's like, well, because, you go to a club like that and you're a big guy, you're going to wind up being a target for like everybody that's there. And he said, plus I have a girlfriend at home and I'm not looking to score, on my girlfriend. I'm like, wow, okay, great. So me and Mark went to the Peppermill, and we played slots most of the night, and then we finished up the slots, and then Mark and I like just sat around for like not till like maybe like 2 a.m, just like he drank while I'm not I don't drink alcohol, so I just had my Diet Coke and just sat and listened to him talk for, we talked about stuff for about another 2 hours. And one of the things that I got out of that 2-hour discussion was pretty amazing insight, not just to a guy like Mark Smith, but to like big men in general. It's like when you're kind of like a smaller guy, and I'm not, as I said, a small guy, but certainly compared to like Dalip Singh or someone like that, everybody's small, right? When you're a big guy, life can be pretty tough. And he really opened up about like how difficult life can be as a big guy. Like how, if there's another big guy in the room, he wants to prove himself, he wants to beat you up. You always have to prove yourself. You always have to show you're tough. People will, give you a hard time because they want to seem like a big man by standing up to you, even if you're not necessarily the aggressor. And like one thing that happened to Mark too, this was a couple of years later, he went back to Vegas, and this taxi driver went and took him to the totally wrong area, like overcharged him like a huge amount of money. Mark got out of the car, and the taxi driver like confronted him and started pushing him around. And Mark realized that, like, I can't hit this guy, because if I hit him, even though he's pushing me first, no one's around to see it, and they'll automatically assume if I beat the hell out of this guy that it's my fault because I was a big man.
Yeah.
And that he was always kind of that being a big man like that, being a tough guy like that, you're guilty of things that you've never done because of how you look, because you intimidate people. You're already guilty before being proven innocent. And Mark Smith, I will definitely say, was one of the most genuine people, and I wouldn't say innocent people of all time, but he really was an honest guy.
No, he's a good-hearted dude.
Yeah. In wrestling, extremely hard to do.
Yes,
extremely hard to do.
Well, there was already so many flags of that you were talking about during that exchange that it was like, if anyone who's listening or watching this hasn't hung around with a lot of wrestlers, there's already a few flags that aren't very common. I don't really like going out and partying. I'm not trying to cheat on my girlfriend. I'm not, there's like a few things where you're like, oh wow, really? Okay.
Yeah, no, these are all genuine things about Mark. I mean, I'm not making up any of those things. He really was a down-to-earth guy, and really when I saw him at the shows, it was like seeing a cousin I hadn't seen in like months. I mean, to how happy I was to see him was a genuine like brightening of my heart. And I just can't believe that in a couple of years it'll be 10 years that he died. That was 7 years.
Piggybacking off what you were saying, he did tell me one story one time where I forgot what kind of social situation this was in. I don't know if it was a club or a party or what, but some guy did, a smaller guy tried to, fight him to prove a point. And Mark said he kind of like, almost like put like a full on like pro wrestling hold on him, where he kind of just held him, and he just held on to him, and he went, "Are you done?" And the guy like kept thrashing for like 30 seconds. And then he was like, "If you're done, I'm going to let you go and you can go on the rest of this party." And the guy was like, "All right, I'm done." He's like, "I'm sorry." He's like, "Okay." And that was it. He was just like, "Dude, I'm not trying to fight you." He's like, "You need to know better right now."
That is so Mark. That is so Mark. He didn't want to ever hurt anybody. And the other thing about a lot of people don't remember too, is that Mark was in the ring as part of the 6-man tag team affair that when Misawa died. I don't know if you remember that at all.
Oh wow, really? Yeah, it totally slipped my mind.
Yeah, no, he was one of the he was. I mean, that being said, he had reached that level in Japan where he could be an American working in a 6-man match with Misawa.
Yeah,
I mean, that people don't get Misawa here in America. We just totally like he's the Ric Flair that nobody knows about. But in Japan, oh my God, you say Misawa and everybody, he is as big a star as Hulk Hogan was or as, Ric Flair was. But here in the United States, he wasn't. But Misawa did an early show of Pro Wrestling Iron.
Yeah.
And that built into that Pro Wrestling Noah connection. And then that brought Mark over there. And it was just so tragic that he was part of that whole scene that cost us Misawa as well. And it's just, there's that weird cloud of just all these things that sort of like circled around that whole time period, including the Brian Ong death situation, which to me, I'm shocked that Dark Side of the Ring hasn't done a dark side of. In fact, I think APW itself and Roland Alexander would be a fascinating Dark Side of the Ring, don't you?
Yeah. There's a lot. There's a lot. It's one of those things where it's difficult to talk about, but yeah, there's some, I remember when it happened because I was there, I was running, I believe video camera for like the shows for like the Brian Ong tribute show. So I remember everyone with their armbands and everything, but there was always like murmurs of people talking about it off to the side. Like that it was a little, suspect, I guess is a word.
I was named in a lawsuit.
Yeah.
I was actually one of the defendants.
Yeah.
They realized that I actually didn't own and have anything to do with the going on of what goes on in the ring. So they dropped it. But I got to tell you, I don't think Roland handled it all that well. And I told them to settle it, as their attorney. And then that led to a lot of friction between me and Roland, and particularly Jason Dedridge. We all argued over that quite a bit. And they wound up taking it to court, and they lost. APW lost. How they were able to keep on in business, I'll never know. Roland was able to keep things running at APW in a way that I'll never understand. Because he never had any money. He was always broke. Yet, and he never paid any taxes on anything that APW ever did. I can say that as a now that enough time has passed. APW, at least the entire time that I was associated with it, from like 2000 to 2012, whenever he died or whatever, never paid anything in taxes. So who knows? That's like how he managed to do that.
Yeah.
That's the one other skill Roland had was being a very shifty accountant. But,
Well, I know me and the other volunteers, quote unquote, at APW events never got paid for anything. It was, volunteers, like people who run video cameras. You consider those volunteers somewhere. Not sure where, only there, I guess. No, I listened to I watched the episode with Jesus, also the Indy Handshake, on your podcast.
Thank you.
He had the same experience I did, where I did camera for the King of Indies, and they were like, "Hey, do you want to copy King Indies?" And I was like, "Absolutely." He's like, "Cool, like 10% off."
Oh my God.
And I was like, and at that point, I just went, "Are you fucking kidding me?" I was like, I got there. I had to ride with someone else. You didn't pay for transport to get my ass out there. I worked the event for free. I've worked many events for free. The least you could do is give me a DVD, and you can't. And that
they lost so much money with King of the Indies. I mean, that was one thing, is that Roland had a vision, and he wasn't going to back off of it no matter what. And then Roland was in a tough spot where he was at the height of where indie wrestling was, but he kept thinking it was going to go higher, and that APW was going to, become Ring of Honor basically. I think he really wanted to make APW the West Coast version of Ring of Honor. And he was sort of spurned on by Rick Bassman. I think he also got in his mind, like, if Rick Bassman can do it, I can do it. And if Rick Bassman can make UPW this big thing and come up with, John Cena and Samoa Joe and Frankie Kazarian, I can do that with Mike Modest, Dilip Singh, Donovan Morgan, with APW, and I'll get Bryan Danielson, Daniel Bryan, and so there was this sort of like the North versus the South, sort of like this yin versus the yang going on. And Roland, to do that, really spent beyond his means, even though he was normally pretty good at being cheap. He got a vision that so controlled him that he wanted to make that happen at all costs. And I think, especially after the second one was a gigantic failure. The first one was okay, because
the second one is the one that I left after.
Yeah, the first one that we did within budget. We only invited people that were in California or that were working California shows, so we didn't have to pay full on cross country airfare to bring them in. But Roland, like in the second one, he brought in Danielson, he brought in Low Key, he brought in
AJ Styles.
AJ Styles, exactly. He had a big bill to fly everybody out. He had like a hotel deal that didn't work out for him. He thought he was going to be able to house him for free, and then that didn't really work out. That sponsorship failed like right at the last minute, so he had to book him into like cheap hotels. We still had to pay the for the money to keep him in hotels that he wasn't expecting to do. And then he was expecting. We had that place in Vallejo, which was the multi-use sports center on Mare Island. And it was huge, and it could fit like 2,000 people. And I think Roland really thought that we'd generate a crowd of 1,000. And it was more like a crowd of 400, which is what we'd always draw.
Yeah.
Even with the largest names on it. And I had the honor of being the curtain jerk match for King of the Indies too, which was a sloppy. I don't even remember our opponents, and I was man. That point, my relationship had degenerated so much that instead of managing Mark Smith or Boom Boom Kamini, I was managing Sean Patrick O'Doul, who was like known for having absolutely no character whatsoever. I don't know why you're pairing a guy who's supposed to be an Italian attorney from New York with a guy who's an Irish bar brawler, but we had a lot of trouble trying to come up with storylines for that particular element. I wasn't there very long because after King of the Indies 2 fell apart, APW, remember, went dark for like about 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
Then it reemerged with Danielson as the head trainer.
Yeah.
And Modest and Morgan and Smith and the other folks moved over to Pro Wrestling Iron. So there was that kind of dark period too, where no one really knew what was going to happen with the future of it. That was a big issue too, because Donovan Morgan wanted to become the head trainer, and instead Roland put Daniel Bryan. And look, I guess in history that he was probably made the right choice, but Modest at the time and Morgan really took affront to that, along with wanting to have the Pro Wrestling Noah connection separate from Roland, and that's what came into Pro Wrestling 9. So
yeah, let me backtrack a little bit.
Sure.
So when you were managing Mark Bison Smith and he's Super Destroyer 2000, when he decides to go, when he really, I think, because you mentioned before he couldn't really, he didn't really like find a character until you put him in the mask, and then afterward, he got the blonde mohawk, and he really like became Bison Smith. And I think, and I'm wondering, what's that like when you're managing someone in the kind of the beginning of their career like that, and like, is it a little bit like, oh man, I'm so proud of you for like finding this, but also
100%.
I'm very I'm
100%.
very like, there's got to be a little bit of you that's like, oh man, but we had our thing,
No, I was 100%. I was like, Mark, I am so glad that you are in your skin now. And then what we did was in Pro Wrestling Iron, as the Bison, he fought a ton of my guys that I managed, which meant that also they kind of did this gig where it's like, okay, buddy, you're going to fail with everybody you manage, but we're going to give you a different person to manage every time. So I got to manage BJ Whitmer and I got to manage Nigel McGuinness. And that Nigel McGuinness match rocked. That was one of my favorite matches that I did. And I got to manage Malachi. I got eventually and take the title away from Mark Smith. So that was kind of fun too. That was a great match that we did over at Swiss Park. So like I was still able to work with him in his other versions. So it was actually a lot of fun to then be his opponent after I helped build him up to something like that. And the thing about managers is that you always want to work with new talent if you can to try to get them over instead. I worked with a lot of guys that were, trying to define themselves. And then we did that same character again in Mr. Massacre with Paul Isadora over at California Championship Wrestling. I put the mask on him. He was my giant mask bodyguard there too. And you know what? Paul is a great guy. He is much scarier with a mask than he is without it. And so I really liked the effect of having the mask on him. And I just love that old school Super Destroyer, mass superstar, spoiler, Mr. Wrestling, God bless his soul, Mr. Wrestling 2, God bless his soul, who just passed, the Destroyer, the Intelligent Destroyer, all those types, the machines. I'm just a big fan of mass wrestling. It's one of my favorite parts of professional wrestling, which I'm sad is sort of dying out as kayfabe, continues.
Yeah.
But hey, God bless Luchasaurus.
Yeah. He's so I don't know if you watch AEW.
I just did.
Okay. So did you see Dynamite this week?
Yes, I did.
When he did that shooting star press off the ramp, I popped by myself on my couch. I was like, what? How does, I don't know. But
AEW is providing a much more entertaining show than the WWE, and I'm watching AEW more closely and more regularly than I am the WWE. That's the truth. That's the
so you
truth.
Must be, as a fan of old school, you must really be loving the Sean Spears, Tully Blanchard gimmick going on right now.
Yeah. I find it's AEW guys haven't been working towards the largest audiences anyway in the last couple of years. So they're used to smaller shows. The WWE guys, are used to 60,000 person arenas or 20,000 person arenas that are filled up. And I think they're not reacting well to the silence. Whereas the AEW folks, plus they're doing a good job of, bringing in the other wrestlers into the crowd and having them at least, and the people that work the show, all kind of hanging out there and making some amount of noise.
Yeah, and furthering storylines also.
Correct.
They'll be like, okay, this guy kind of gets into it at him at ringside. Now that sets up a match for next week. Perfect. Okay,
yeah, they've done better with that small element than the WWE has, and I think I'm enjoying those shows more because they're able to play the smaller fans and not act like, oh my God, there's nobody here. Whereas when you saw the Undertaker, working an empty show, he looked like he was about to take a nap somewhere on, the ring apron, in the middle of the match. He just was really, you just could tell, like being in almost a practice facility, just took it all out of him. He's not a guy that, wants to spend time practicing. So,
So how does that work for someone like you? So you're a manager and you're, part of your job is to interact with the fans, get them riled up around you. So when you're in different indie shows and you're working and sometimes you have a bigger crowd, sometimes you have a smaller crowd, how do you adjust what you're doing? How do you, what's your psychology like when it comes to that kind of thing?
Couple things help. One is my brother would come to the shows too. Okay. And I would send my brother out to be a sort of like Bob Zamuda Yeah, are you familiar at all with Andy Kaufman?
Mm-hmm.
That my brother would be Bob Zamuda and I would be Andy Kaufman. So sometimes I would well, first of all, I'd have him do reconnaissance in the crowd, and he would say, there's a bunch of real yokels in the front row on the left side. Why don't we? I'm going to sit behind them, and I want you to go and heckle them. And then sometimes I would also pick on my own brother, and then the fans would go, "Oh man, you're so mean to that guy. Why are you so mean to him?" And but you gotta read the hate in the crowd, like a stand-up comedian knows that there are people that are gonna laugh at his jokes.
Mm-hmm.
You find the people that are really into it, the people with signs, the people with T-shirts, the people who are missing the front rows of their teeth, exactly. And then you find the one thing that I never did is I never worked blue, and I never worked a racist angle. I never would say anything racist to anyone. But some of the hicks in the front row are so easy to insult. I'd say, hey, I didn't know that I didn't know that okay. The other day I was on the internet and I saw your face over at www.imanIdiot.com. You bring out the old Don Rickle insults, and you go if I add the four of you together, I might get an entire set of teeth. And things that come from the Don Rickle school of and Henny Youngman and from old Rodney Dangerfield type shtick, and also Andy Kaufman. Andy Kaufman was great at generating just raw heat from reading an audience and seeing what things they hate about you. And then, of course, I was always my character was always from New York, so I had the Yankees tie. So I was make fun of the A's, which were a big East Bay, thing.
Yeah.
And I'd make fun of how much I hated California, and I'd say how great New York was. And I used to say how my client Donald Trump, yes, Donald Trump in 2000 was paying me $1,000 per hour. I didn't know then, but I invoked every New York celebrity I could. I was talking about Leona Helmsley, Woody Allen, and Larry King, and so forth. They were all my clients, all the clients of One Buddy Sotello. It's a way to generate GP. So you just work those things, and then you get people. You find the one that's the most rabid anti-fan or fan, and you get that person frothing at the mouth, and the people around them, it'll be a puddle of hate, and the waves of hate just sort of emanate from there. And all of a sudden, you have 500 people chanting, "Buddy sucks, Buddy sucks, Buddy sucks." And that is an amazing feeling when you're able to get a crowd to feel what you want to feel. That is why wrestlers do what they do, managers do what they do, musicians do what they do, dancers do what they do. That suspension of belief, and then you get the applause or the boos, but they're doing what you want them to do. Okay. It's a drug that infects people in ways that make them jump off of burning tables and hit each other with fluorescent light bulbs and do steel cage matches for 60 minutes. That's why we do it. Is the drug that is fame and performance art, and that's something that's built into human beings, or at least some human beings. It's really stupid ones that are willing to sacrifice their bodies for other people's pleasure. But it's as central as human history is. It's something you'll see 5,000 years from now. Humans will still do some kind of performance art, and 5,000 years ago we were doing it back then too, in some way, shape, or form.
So how do you, at the time you're managing someone, how do you walk that fine line of, getting yourself over too much versus getting over the person in the ring? How do you make sure that you don't put yourself over more and overshadow what's going on?
Easy. Rest holds. And when guys get thrown out of the ring. Okay? Otherwise, you listen for when the crowd goes mild. because that's the worst thing in the world. You know, what you don't want is a chant of boring, boring. So if you feel the crowd's starting to get to that, do it. Otherwise, the truth is you got to be paying some attention to your spots too. You can't, it's happened to me a couple of times. Look, you do it long enough in your career and you miss your spot. You get so into, like, you know, a yelling match with somebody up close. Okay, one time in Vallejo, there were these two guys that dressed up as the Insane Clown Posse. I don't know if you remember. But there were these two guys that looked exactly like, you know, the Insane Clown Posse. And Mark Smith hated them. And they hated Mark Smith. And they hated me too. And so Mark Smith, I did actually have to hold Mark Smith back a couple times from actually going into the audience and beating the hell out of those two guys. And he would have. He was like that mad. I mean, they were just incessant. They were just incessant and totally vulgar and just really, I mean, drunk, annoying, like those kind of guys. But you have to, you know, there's four corners of the ring. So in that instance, I would find, you know, Mark and I would find a way to work away from those guys and go to another part of the crowd and work that part of the crowd rather than get anywhere near those guys.
Okay.
They would throw stuff on Mark when he would fall outside the ring, and like coffee and things like that on him. Yeah, he was really like not going to take it, you know, like,
wow.
Like one more time. And, you know, I was like, yeah, Mark, but then we'll have a lawsuit. So like, you know, let's just try to work. And then the other thing too, is that you know your spots. So you know where there are high spots and guys are going to be working. I mean, as a manager, it is your duty to go over the match and sit there during the match that they're going over and say, okay, here are spots that are going on. Here are spots where, you know, there's going to be a rest hold or something like that. And that's when I can do that stuff. Plus, they'll call for you to, you know, do the leg trip or to get up on the apron and yell at the ref or something like that. And meanwhile, you know, what I mostly do is torment the ref. That's the other thing that you should do as a manager, is if you're not making fun of the crowd, make the ref's life miserable. Just constantly bark at them about every little thing. I would actually say to the ref, your shoes are untied. I would say things like you know, I was looking for your stripes to be white and black. Instead, they're black and white. What the hell is wrong with you? I'd say, where did you learn how to count to three? You know, whatever local junior college is around, you know, like
yeah.
Antioch. I'd say, did you go to Antioch Junior College or something like that? You know, I would just be in this constant, like, and then I like the idea of still, and back then, you know, kayfabe was not completely broken. So I like the idea of a manager showing that he's rooting his guy on. So I would say, you know, I borrow from all the managers that I like. I have a stay on him chant kind of thing that I would do, which is a Jimmy Hart kind of tribute. And then I'd have some cornetisms that I'd throw in, you know, to the ring to, you know, give actual wrestling advice, even though your wrestlers aren't going to follow it. You're still saying, work him, take him to the corner, get the quick tag. You know, I like that because then people are thinking, okay, then he's actually managing. He's not just here to yell at the crowd the whole time.
Yeah. So when a wrestler is going to signal for a trip, how does he signal for a trip in the match?
That's something you go ahead, you do beforehand.
Okay.
You go before it's not a signal thing. What you do is, you know, what I've always considered is smart is know the two moves that are coming up before you're supposed to do your thing. So in other words, a guy will say, I'm going to do a backbreaker, and then I'm going to, you know, climb up to the top rope. And then I'd say, okay, so I know when I see the backbreaker and he starts climbing the top rope, I'm going to get up on the ring apron and start shouting at the ref. Or I'm going to, you know, or they'll say, okay, you know, we'll do a crossover body. I'll do a leapfrog. And then after the leapfrog, you trip me. So say, okay, you see something first, because if you wait for the actual move to happen, sometimes it's too late. You're like out of position. But if you know the move that's going to happen just before that, it gives you a chance to be in the right spot. Because it's all about that, being in the right spot. If you're in the wrong spot as a manager, you get the reputation as being just a distraction to the boys more than it is to the audience. But I have had wrestlers say you generate too much heat or something like that. But I've never had a wrestler that worked for me that I was managing ever said I generated too much heat. They were all like, that was great. I could take a total rest. I could do a total rest hold. And we still had the crowd yelling and nobody was saying boring because you were able to tell everybody to shut up when they were, about to say boring. And then they all yelled at you,
Yeah.
So most wrestlers like that. They don't have to carry the match entirely by themselves entertainment wise. They can take a blow and still have somebody that's entertaining the crowd. So, but that's now so old school. I don't know if, you don't see any male managers in today's, in any of the feds right now, except maybe Aaron Stevens, you want to count him when he's quote unquote managing the question mark in the
Well, I mean, they got, like we were mentioning AEW, Blanchard is on Sean Spears, and then Arn has been the coach.
Right. Yeah.
For Cody.
I guess those are, but they're not the same kind of like heel coming.
No. Yeah.
Every time, like a Cornette or a Hart or, that kind of thing. And you don't have people with stables, like I had my Sotello Syndicate, which I love. That's the other thing I love. I love making stables. That was a great thing that you just don't see anymore because managers just don't have that kind of power. But those were great. Heel stables are great stuff. And I guess you could say that the guy who's got the Dark Order going over in AEW.
Brody Lee and them.
Yeah, Brody Lee. He's probably as close to being a heel manager stable as you've got in wrestling right now. Or maybe Jericho.
Yeah.
But those things are good. I think those things are good for wrestling. People like these kind of bad guy groups or good guy groups as opposed to everybody being solo on their own. I think.
Yeah. Well, they've been teasing the Four Horsemen angle with the FTR and Cody, and I'd be interested. I think that'd be a fun thing to do. Actually, I was watching on the WWE Network, going back and watching old WCW stuff, and man, I completely forgot how underrated the Dangerous Alliance is.
They were pretty tough.
It's like you look at that group of guys and you're like, this is top level talent going on here.
Well, but it's still breaking their way in at the time when they came in as a Dangerous Alliance. We didn't know how good they were going to be over time. So let me see. I'm trying to remember who the Dangerous Alliance was right off the top of my head.
Well, you had Steve Austin.
Yes.
Let me see. Hold on. Let me just pull it up real quick.
Also in that?
Yep. Yeah, because it was both the Hollywood Blondes.
Yeah.
I believe, wasn't it Medusa with them also?
Oh, I love Medusa Michelli so much. I had that was one of my first wrestling crushes, I would say. Wendy Richter, obviously, everybody was in love with her back in the day. And Medusa, I love Medusa because Medusa was tough. I mean, she really set the stage for women to get into wrestling and wrestle and do moves as well as men could do them. She didn't do that like body slam where you hook the arm over the head.
Oh yeah,
like a lot of women did in Glow. She would like really do like the full on release body slam type thing. She would do real vertical suplexes that weren't just like rolling on her back and just making the other girl, just do a roll.
Yeah,
over. She would actually lift them up.
Or the scoop slam where you release it like a foot above the ring.
Yes.
Where you're just like,
yes, it's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Real, that kind of thing. I was like, wow, you know what? Because in the 80s, I was like, girls could actually wrestle as well as a man could if they, dedicated themselves. And I think Medusa kind of introduced that style of, really trying to wrestle like a man wrestle.
Yeah. And she had some great matches with like Akira Hokuto and WCW when they were really like, for a while there, it seemed like they were really going to push in like a strong women's division, and then it kind of just went away. And it was
kind of like as I was talking about last week, with Jesus about cruiserweights. The WWF got excited about it. They would push it. Then all of a sudden it would just sort of disappear. I mean, and then not get revisited again for years. And then they'd have another tournament. They get excited about it. They would, push it, and then it would disappear. It would be the light heavyweight title, or it'd be the cruiserweight, or it would be, the junior heavyweight title, or whatever you want to call it. They would introduce it, get excited, and let it drop by the wayside. I kind of like the title. I mean, but the problem is that you have, once the cruiserweight title and all the cruiserweights are done wrestling for it, then you wind up having the cruiserweights starting to take on the heavyweight guys for titles. And then inevitably you have the heavyweight guys going down and fighting for the cruiserweight title.
Yeah.
And then
that was the problem NWA TNA and then Impact had, was they were like, we have the X division, but it's not a weight class. So because of that, that's literally what happened. Like Samoa Joe's fighting for the X division title. I'm like, well, then what is this? What is
it? It's just another title. I kind of liked it when it was just the WWE Championship, Intercontinental, and Tag Championships.
Yeah.
And then the guys that held it for a long time. Although I guess it'd be argued that, well, Brock Lesnar has held the WWE Championship that long. But when you wrestle once a year, it's not something that, has a lot of merit to it. It doesn't really feel like it's being defended very much. So, by having all these other side titles, I know that belts mean money because the WWE markets the hell out of them and everybody buys a new replica belt. And that's why they introduce a different type of belt like every 45 minutes. It's like,
now they have what I consider probably the ugliest titles I've ever seen in any wrestling company.
They are pretty bad. I don't like them.
I don't like them at all.
I look back at like the old NWA titles and
well, you were just talking about the Intercontinental title. The old WWF Intercontinental title is one of the most gorgeous belts.
The white one,
the one with the white strap with the
Heartbreak Kid.
Yeah, Heartbreak Kid. Mr. Perfect had it. Like those ones were. That one was just. That's one of my favorite titles. I love that title.
I liked the winged belt.
I did too.
And then I was looking at the Stone Cold Skull belt the other day. I was like, you know what? That actually was kind of a cool title. I mean, obviously only Stone Cold could have it, but it was kind of a cool title. But yeah, I wouldn't buy a replica belt. And then apparently everyone's buying these side plates.
Yeah.
That's the next big thing. So it's not bad enough that you spent $1,500 on a replica belt, but now you got to spend another $500 on side plates that, they honk if you're horny or whatever,
I just want to add in the reason I always knew that WWE never really understood cruiserweights, especially lucha guys, was they never understood the fact that lucha isn't a gimmick. Like, you're a lucha person and you have a gimmick, but lucha itself is not a gimmick. That's just, I'm a luchador. Like, that's like saying my gimmick is I'm a pro wrestler. Right. And that's why I love like the Lucha Brothers, like their whole like Zero Miedo, all that stuff. Like they're like, this is our character. Their character is not just that they are luchadors. They have their own personalities or whatever. Every time the WWE tries to put in mask guys, they're always like, they're luchadors. That's their gimmick.
Right. Well, because they have so few of them, they kind of, hate to say it, token wrestlers to them. They're just like, we've got to have lucha wrestlers. So here are, blue and white label luchadors, generic luchadors, you get it at the supermarket. No, I agree. I mean, there's so much that Vince could do to access the lucha market and to build that up, even have like some kind of like real side story that would like bring in that kind of market, but he doesn't care. I mean, Vince has lost that ability, and the writers of WWE have never been enamored with the smaller size of most lucha wrestlers. So I think their chances to continue to make inroads with AEW, and they, fortunately, AEW is more open to that sort of thing. And so, I mean, to me, I feel like the hope of the new generation for wrestling is AEW. I'm sort of hoping that maybe when the COVID virus goes away, the people start really leaning towards AEW and put some leverage on the WWE. And we do have another quote unquote Monday Night War type situation where the WWE has to improve its product because it has some real competition. Once they took over everything, I mean, there's no surprise that once Vince took over the WWE, WCW and AWA and all that stuff, that we went from having, really great stuff to, Brawl for It All, the Billy and Chuck wedding, the Giving Birth to a Hand by Mae Young.
Still, it's so
and
funny.
the Kiss My Ass Club.
Yeah.
It's when there was no competition and nobody out there to like hold Vince to a standard, the kind of wrestling that we were subjected to is insulting. I couldn't tell my friends that I was a wrestling fan during those years because it was just too embarrassing.
Yeah.
Admit it. They're like, oh, so you like this Kiss My Ass Club thing going on here? And I go, not really. No.
Yeah.
But that's what's happening.
Yeah. And AEW isn't perfect, but to me, it feels like the workers seem like they're actually having fun when they're working, which is not something I could say about any WWE product I've seen for a very long time. 2, it's ran by mostly the workers who are running the company. So I feel like they have actual wrestlers' best intentions in mind. Maybe that's why they've been testing everyone for COVID, whereas the WWE was not for some reason. And I feel like if there's something I don't like in AEW, chances are the next segment I'm going to enjoy. So it's kind of like, it doesn't all feel like it's coming out of the same factory.
Yeah,
So.
no, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I think it's been big, and I think, well, also the other thing is that the wrestlers in the WWE truly don't know when they're going to be next, like when they're fighting for their jobs, they're fighting for their lives. They have this sort of invisible specter hanging out next to them, and they're being given terrible storylines to work with, and then they're told when those storylines don't work that it's their fault. Because it couldn't possibly be because, we had, Eric Bischoff writing some of these storylines. No, the storylines suck because you're not over. And then yet we're on command by Vince, to make sure that no one under 6'10" gets signed, with our company. Well, there's only so many talented 6'10" people out there, otherwise just getting someone that's 6'10" because they're 6'10", big cast, isn't exactly, going to always work out. It isn't always going to motivate people. I mean, that's why a guy like Luchasaurus is a big deal. He's a big man, but he can actually work. He works a really good match, really great rates. He really puts out. He can do some great moves, but he can also take some shots. He's not unwilling to do a job. I was really surprised that he jobbed in Dynamite. The Wolford to
Wardlow.
Wardlow. Wardlow also looks really impressive. I mean, that to me, I think that personally was the match so far of 2020. I love for my favorite match. 2020 was the Luchasaurus versus Wardlow.
That was a crazy match. That was a great way to start out the show. That's for sure.
But it didn't need the run-ins at the end. That's the only thing I'd say AEW needs to sort of get away from, because that might be a little bit too ECW of them, is to have every big match end with a Pier 6 brawl, everybody coming in from, the stands and all that stuff. Stuff can be, taken care of with just two guys. And if they do that a little bit more and not bring in all the in every time that you have factions facing each other, they all got to get in the ring. I think that makes things just a little bit cleaner. But as I said, what I liked about the Wardlow ending was it was a for sure pin.
Mm-hmm.
So I was impressed with seeing a clean ending to the match.
That's one thing they said when they started out the AEW was they said they didn't want like too many they didn't want any like non-clear finishes. They didn't want disqualifications. And I think to this day, there's been like one DQ.
Wow.
Which is pretty good.
Yes.
Yes. So it's about that time. The promoter is running out.
I appreciated it. This was really a lot of fun.
Yeah. So we're going to go ahead and take the show home. I got a few questions here to ask you. A little kind of rapid fire, but if it triggers some kind of a story or anything you want to tell in between, you're more than welcome to do so. Huh?
It's hard to shut me up, isn't it?
It's totally fine. So we'll start off actually just piggybacking off what we were doing. If you were to go ahead and put on the management suit again and put on the Yankee tie, if you were to pick one person in WWE and one person in AEW that you would love to manage right now, if you could just step in and do it.
Luchasaurus, number one. Absolutely. And I think I could do a pretty good job of managing Brock Lesnar. I think I would have him getting in the ring more, but I could, especially since Paul Heyman's been let loose, I think I'd be a good substitute for Paul Heyman for Brock Lesnar. So
there you go.
I was looking for someone. You can give me a call.
When you're watching wrestling or you're managing and you're watching it from the ringside area, what's your favorite move or hold that you see the wrestlers do?
I'm a sucker for the claw. I'm sorry. I know it's hokey. I know in the day of kayfabe and everything, the claw is, I just love watching a guy who really knows how to do it. I was a big fan of the spoiler. Mark Smith used it. I don't know if you remember.
And he would do like the claw choke slam.
Yeah, I love that move. I know it's pretty dangerous, but I do love the claw slam move.
The intro for the podcast, the video intro ends with him doing it from the top rope.
Oof, I wouldn't want to take. Fortunately, he never did that on me. So yeah, I'd say the claw slam would be mine.
And I like the way Lance Archer incorporates it at the end of his fight, where he just kind of over and over again hits the guy and then he pins him with it.
But I also love the heart punch. I love the heart punch because it was a no impact move that the guys that we did it to sold like crazy. Everybody enjoys the heart punch sell because you can just totally like oversell it and writhe around on the ground and you do the kicking and you can do the twitching stuff. Nobody does the jittery like thing, and you can just be so overly corny with it. And I did love that part about the heart punch. Okay.
See, I like it when a guy like Mark's size does it. I don't like it when I see a 180-pound dude in the indies do it. I'm like, what is the point of this?
Exactly. No. When people sold the Mark's heart punch, they really believed it. So yes, continue.
What's the craziest fan interaction you've had?
Oh, okay. Perfect one. Vinny and I were, Vinny Massaro and myself were headed in Pacifica, and we were headed to the ring. And this guy who was in the front row, who was mentally disabled. I mean, he was, someone that, unfortunately rode the short bus to the match. He had a boiling cup of coffee and he threw it on Vinny. And Vinny was ready to kill him. And so was I. I was like, wow, that's pretty scary. I mean, the fans really hated us in Pacifica. We were really me and Vinny were just like, for whatever reason, just people really hated us. But then after the show was over, who was standing in the front row looking for our autograph? And it was that fan. And it was like, you hated us, our guts, but you want our autograph. Oh. And, the guy who was with him, who brought him to the show, said, yes, this guy doesn't quite have all his marbles together, but he loves you guys. He loves you guys. And so it just shows what kind of fans you get. You never know who's in the front row.
Wow. When you're working as a manager, you have a good rapport with the person you're managing, hopefully, but sometimes you're working with another person that maybe you don't. So what's the worst thing someone can do when they're on the opposite side of the ring when it comes to laying out a match or putting on a match?
Oh, God, I've been potatoed by the other side. Yeah, I was this guy Dante, who was just, one of the great mental midgets of professional wrestling. He really has probably an IQ of about 50. And I was, my character's from New York. So I got up on the apron and his move was to bounce off the ropes and, knock me off the apron. And he absolutely potatoed me with a forearm and knocked me down and really hurt me pretty bad, in the chest. And in the locker room, I was like, well, what the hell was that all about? All you need to do is tap me and I would have just fallen right off the apron. And he said, well, you know what? You're wearing the New York hat and I'm a big New England Patriots fan. and boy, do I hate the New York Giants, man. So I saw your hat and I just wanted to hit you. And I'm like, wow, okay, I'm not working another show with Dante. So
Wow.
yeah, that's. I think potatoing is the worst thing you can do. Is when some guy is expecting you to go light and you wallop him, then you know what happens is the next time you bounce across the ring and someone has a chance to wallop you, they're going to wallop you, and probably twice as hard as how you hit them. And that's how real injuries happen inside the ring. People say it's all fake, but what they don't understand is potatoing is not fake.
Yeah. I remember actually one time at an APW show, it was Dalip Singh against Max Justice. And Max Justice did his moonsaults, which was pretty crazy considering his size. And Dalip rolled the wrong way, and his knees caught Dalip in the back because he was supposed to move out of the way of the moonsault. And Dalip got up, and I don't know if he assumed it was Max's fault, but he put him in the corner and just started on him, just like to the point where I was like, he's not pretending.
The whole gym had to basically clear out. The whole gym had to like pull them off of each other.
Yeah,
so that was a crazy show. I remember that.
Yeah.
Back in the locker room, I remember then they went back into the locker room and like Roland had to like keep both of them from killing each other. I think that may have been like one of the last times Max did anything at APW. I think he was really angry at the way that Roland basically took Dalip's side on that thing, and because he wanted Dalip to be the big star. And so kind of I remember that. I remember that. That was not a pretty night at the garage.
Yeah, I remember after seeing it, I was kind of like, this isn't Max's fault. Like, he rolled the wrong way. He's supposed to, roll towards him. He's doing a moonsault. Like, okay. Anyway, yeah. But when's the last time, or not the last time, but what was the time in the ring that you were surprised legitimately by how good or someone was in the ring and how quickly they took to the ring?
Probably my first match with Vinny Massaro. I was like, you know what? Vinny is really a very innovative wrestler. And it's like, I'm glad I actually have a seat in the very front row and I'm able to watch him do his thing, and work his show. The other time I felt that way was watching Samoa Joe work our match against Boom Boom Kamini. And I was like, watching Samoa Joe do what he did, I said, and this is the King of the Indies 2000, the first one in 2000, or during the UPW invasion in 2001. I think maybe it may have been Antioch. And he was so good in the ring. I was like, you know what? He's definitely going to be a big time pro. I felt that way about Kazarian, and I felt that way about Christopher Daniels. Both of those guys had gotten call-ups briefly to the pros, whereas Samoa Joe hadn't gotten a call-up yet. And I was like, it's only a matter of time before Samoa Joe becomes a big name.
Has a booker ever tried to stiff you or one of your clients on money?
I never got paid. I did all the stuff that I did. I got paid for a couple of shows, maybe like 4 shows in my life.
How about for any of the people you were managing?
I've had them accept less, but I would never have anybody work for me and have them go for free. I will say this, that the former owner of California Championship Wrestling borrowed money off of me once and never paid me back. But that was just all part of I did it to make sure the show happened, because if I didn't put that money out, the show would have not happened at all. And the show did happen. I was supposed to get paid back for it, and I just never did. I'm still glad I did that for that show, so that show happened. We didn't have a dead show, and that we had to turn away fans. I would rather have lost the money than to have lost the fans. So it happens, but wrestling takes sacrifice. And you'll see that, if you don't draw a show, if you have a show and the number of wrestlers outnumber the fans, you're not going to get paid. And it's your opportunity then to say, if I'm not going to get paid, I'm not working the show. Or you can say, you know what? I need the practice anyway. I'm going to treat this like it's a light show, and I'm going to learn how to do stuff, and I'm going to, interact with the boys that are here and get something out of this rather than have it be a total waste of time. But it is hard when you're wrestling in front of like 25 or 30 people. It is really hard to just focus on your character. And you know that people are going to go home broke. I've had to give money to some guys just so they could get something to eat. Otherwise, they said, I'm going to pass out. I'm hungry. I've been working on the ring and, before this, and I got enough money for gas. I even get like $1 for a cheeseburger, so I can have something to eat. I'm like, dude, yes, I'll give you $1. I never did wrestling for the money. And I've never done it for the money. I did it for the experience and to be able to take one of the biggest things off my bucket list and check that off and say, I did it, instead of sat around during my life and said, gee, I should have done it.
There you go. All right. What's the hardest you've laughed at working an indie show?
What's the hardest that okay. Let me see. One time when, and this wasn't really an indie show, but it was at the garage. And it involved Dilip Singh, of all things. Dilip Singh was sitting in the upper area where they had the dorm rooms, which were really just totally unfire coated, sleeping bags on the floor, basically. And Dilip was trying to eat nothing but tuna. And it was just so stinky. And he would leave all the tuna juice in the cans, there. So Corey, do you know Corey, the guy Tommy Drake? He was Tommy Drake. He saved up all the tuna juice that was in the cans, and he put it and he balanced it right over by Dilip's bed, so when Dilip got up, it would tip over and spill all over him. And it did. And Dilip found out that Corey did it, and he chased him around the building at least 4 times trying to he's like, Corey, I kill you! Corey, I kill you! And he's just running and running and running around. I thought that was great. And then the other thing, too, that was great, this reminds me, too, is that I did one light show as the manager of Dilip. And we made Dilip into Dilip Van Halen. And I was going to make, he was the missing Van Halen brother. And I was going to make Dilip I was going to manage his music career. I wasn't going to manage his wrestling career. And so he had a guitar, which he played backwards. We had him sing to the fans,
What in the world?
And he was just awful. And it was really, it was a gimmick that I'm surprised the WWE didn't at least try once. If they made him the Indian Elvis or something like that, that would have been a great thing, having him sing. Because he just, you know Dilip's voice. You know, he couldn't sing at all. So I thought that was a great little skit there, too. That was
oh, my gosh. Speaking of, this actually segues perfectly as far as gimmicks go. You've been to a lot. You've worked a lot of shows, a lot of different places. What's the worst gimmick you've seen?
Wow. The worst gimmick in an indie show.
Yeah.
I did not like, the Gigolo, Vinny Massaro. That was one thing that I thought was just getting over. Not at all. I've also seen who is someone that really didn't get over at all in my mind. That's a really good question. I didn't. We had okay. One time we had in CCW when we were short of guys, we did bring up a luchador, and his name was Super Bozo, and he was a clown. And I don't know, it just he was a clown, but not like the Doink kind of clown. He was like a clown, somebody that literally was someone's children's entertainer. And he knew no moves.
Oh,
he had no ability. He didn't do anything funny or anything like that. He just literally tagged in, got beaten up, and pinned. And that was I was like, well, why are you even dressed up as a clown then? You don't even have any kind of I don't know. They may have just found the guy on the street corner somewhere and said, here's $20. We're going to beat you up and pin you. Here's a clown
Oh.
costume. So that was
Yeah.
pretty bad gimmick. Super bozo.
For this question, this isn't, like I said, this is not a shoot podcast. If you don't want to name any names, totally
My name
fine.
all the time.
Any former WWE, WCW, ECW guys that were working on a show that you were on that thought they were bigger than the show, acted
yes.
like they were.
Bingo. You don't
yeah.
have to finish that. You don't have to finish that. Perfect one comes to mind. Absolutely. Buff the Stuff Bagwell. He was the least professional guy I ever worked with. Showed up at a BTW show 45 minutes before his match. Kirk White was calling him the entire time.
Is this in San Jose?
Yeah. It
I was at that show.
Yeah. And Mark Smith was on that, and so was Corey. They fought each other, and it was the only match I ever managed in BTW. And Buff Bagwell came in late, was totally drunk, and spent most of the time when he, instead of going over his match with Joey Styles, was instead talking to Corey about the difference between Jägermeister burps and Captain Morgan burps, and which one was the worst one to have. And they were kind of in an argument. He was saying, no, Captain Morgan is worse. And he's like, no, Jägermeister is worse if you drink too much of it. So he fought a 2.5 minute match. I mean, I think you saw it. It was
I remember this one.
He was barely able to walk to the ring. He was that drunk.
That, and the entire time he was holding in his gut.
Yeah, he was totally out of shape.
So he couldn't take a bump. Every time he did anything, he couldn't fall down, because that would mean he would have to bend at the waist.
It was embarrassing. Even for the fans that have very low expectations, which is a BTW crowd. Even they were like, this is a pretty bad match. I have two others that I will mention. The other one is Manny Fernandez. So I won't get into it. We had Susumu Sakai on the show, and Sarah Del Rey was on the show, and we had Manny Fernandez on there. He is the embodiment of what the Me Too movement is supposed to be fighting against. He was hitting on them as if he had a sledgehammer. And it was embarrassing and ugly to watch. The sexual harassment that he was basically, all the female wrestlers were on the card. He was just hitting on them nonstop. And I was just like, oh God, man. And, he's saying, hey, I used to be on TV. Come over to my hotel room after the show. And I was like, oh, man, give it up. And they were just pushing him away and just really just pushing him off. And then the final one that I really did not like working with was Rikishi. He was a real problem guy on Wrestling for Charity. I would never work with him again. He showed up. He also showed up late. He insisted on getting a bunch of first of all, the Wrestling for Charity had to come up with tickets for him and his family to go to to Great America, Paramount's Great America. So that was an extra cost. Then he showed up. He didn't want to talk to any of the other boys except these guys that he had already worked another show with. And then his attitude of performing itself was just really awful. And when I didn't want to take his stink face, because I didn't want to take his stink face, he was so insulted and furious at me personally. And then he caused a real disruption in the locker room. And I'm just saying, I know he's a WWE Hall of Famer, but that was a crap performance by him. And I'm glad that I won't work into the show with Rikishi ever again. I hope not.
What for you? I call this the touchy-feely question of the segment. Basically, what for you, whether it be before a match, during a match, after a match, it gives you those goosebumps, your pure joy in wrestling. When it happens, you're like, this is why I fucking love wrestling. This is why I got into it.
Oh, the Buddy Sucks chants. Those things are great. I mean, when I was in Cloverdale, the high point of my career was we were in Cloverdale in Northern California. And for whatever reason, we sold the place out to the rafters. We had 500 people, standing room only. It was the biggest crowd that we had in the show. And the Battle Royale, the other managers went in, and someone was supposed to tell me to go in after introducing the managers, but they forgot to tell me. So I stood out there during the Battle Royale, and me and Mark Smith, as Super Destroyer 2000, took on Kid Chrome and had like a match outside of the match that was absolutely just one of the most fun. The crowd just went crazy over it. Then Mark Smith and Kid Chrome had a match against each other later in the show that was off the rails. And it went crazy. And it culminated with Kid Chrome doing a dive out on us. And the fans went absolutely nuts. And then Vinny Massaro took on Nate Miyake, I believe, for the Internet Championship. And by that third match, for the crowd buildup was so intense on that one. And me, because I'd shown up for the third time out there, the amount of Buddy Sucks chants that were going on in that arena for the very last match. And it was a great match that Vinny had with Nate Miyake. I was just like, this is why people do wrestling. It's for a day like this. I also had, when I was at California Championship Wrestling, and the Super Slam show, where I wound up winning the world championship, managing the world champion winner, the tag team champion winner at the same night. And it was the night before my birthday, my 40th birthday. And so for my 40th birthday, I could show everyone the world title belt. That was great. That was also the culmination of a year's worth of a build-up that we had. And it went over perfectly. It was a perfectly run show. I know you didn't go to any of the CCW shows, but the Super Slam was maybe my highest moment as a manager. Not as big a crowd as Cloverdale, but it was the kind of thing that when you go home and the next morning you wake up and you see the belt that you helped win, you're like, yeah, that's the cool.
Very nice. All right. And then we'll just end it off with any pranks or embarrassing stories you can remember.
Oh, well, I have obviously the one with Delete getting dunked on with the tuna. It's not really a prank, but it taught me how tough the wrestlers really were. We were sitting around doing nothing at all in the APW office, and Vinny takes his arm and puts it on the desk, and he takes a stapler, and he opens up the stapler, and he goes, pow, 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 and staples his arm. And I thought, oh, well, this is some kind of trick, like the staples are bent already and they're just lying on his arm. And then he takes a pen cap, he sticks it in, and he pops each one of the staples out, and then blood is running down his arm. I'm like, that, and he's like, that's the kind of, and he didn't flinch when he put all those staples in his arm. I said, that's how tough you have to be a wrestler. He's like, that's how tough you have to be a wrestler. If you can staple your arm like this and you don't even flinch, it doesn't hurt you. In fact, you kind of like it. Then you have a career in wrestling. If you can't do this, don't get into wrestling.
Wow.
So there's your story for you.
Awesome. Well, please go ahead and plug anything that you want to plug. Tell people where they can see you online, all that kind of good stuff.
Yes, you can find me on Facebook.com as Buddy Sotello, ESQ, BUDDYSOTELLO. But more importantly, I do a podcast with Evan Ginsberg every week called Wrestling and Everything Coast to Coast. He's in New York. I'm in California. We try to cover everything in between. Sometimes we talk comic books. Sometimes we talk horror. We talk to people of a wrestling background, but then we get into the other things that they do in their life and find out how wrestling either influences it or what they do to express themselves outside of wrestling. We've had some great shows. You can find that on Facebook, Wrestling and Everything Coast to Coast as a group. And we're also on YouTube. So we'd love it if some of your listeners check this out.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Love to have you on again sometime in the future. I think it'd be a lot of fun. I feel like we're only cracking the surface of some more good stories in there. So.
Well, it was a lot of fun, and I really appreciate the time. And maybe we'll have you on our show sometime soon.
There we go.
So
that'd be
we
fun.
already had Jesus, so we'd love to have you too.
Awesome. Thank you very much, sir. You have a good day. Stay safe out there.
Okay, thank you. You too. Bye-bye.